I never imagined I'd see my 70-year-old mother, Grace, sprawled across our front lawn, her silver hair matted with blood, her frail body motionless under the harsh midday sun. It wasn't a heart attack or fall that brought her there, it was a garden hose. A damn garden hose, coiled imperfectly by HOA standards, that sparked a chain of events ending with her lying unconscious, a crimson pool spreading beneath her head. And standing over her, clutching her clipboard like a scepter, was Evelyn Hart, the self-appointed queen of Willow Grove Estates. The look on Evelyn's face when I revealed I owned her house and half the neighborhood at the emergency HOA meeting 3 days later? Priceless. Her smug, pinched expression melted into something between terror and disbelief, her reign of terror crumbling in real time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to how it all began, how a quiet real estate investor named Daniel Carter became the unlikely avenger of a neighborhood held hostage by a petty dictator. It started 6 weeks earlier. Mom had come to stay with me after my shoulder surgery left me sidelined from my usual routines. At 70, she was a force of nature, sharp-witted, fiercely independent, and stubborn as hell. She'd insisted on helping with small projects around the house, despite my protests. "I'm not here to sit around knitting, Danny," she'd said, her blue eyes twinkling with mischief. Idle hands breed trouble. So, there she was that Tuesday morning, watering my patchy front lawn, when Evelyn Hart descended like a vulture spotting carrion. From my Lee VY room window, I watched it unfold. Mom, in her faded denim overalls, was humming an old Beatles tune as she dragged the hose across the grass. She'd coiled it loosely the night before, neat enough, I thought, but not up to Evelyn's obsessive standards. Evelyn, a wiry woman in her late 50s with a perm so tight it looked painful, stormed down the sidewalk in her signature pastel tracksuit, her clipboard trembling with righteous fury. "Good morning, Evelyn," Mom called, offering a wave and a smile. She'd always been the peacemaker, the one who could charm a rattlesnake. But Evelyn wasn't in the mood for charm. "Your hose is a violation, Grace," Evelyn snapped, her voice nasal and cutting. Section 14, Paragraph 3 of the bylaws. All garden equipment must be stored out of sight when not in use. "This is an eyesore." Mom blinked, lowering the hose. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I'll put it away right now." "Too late," Evelyn said, scribbling furiously on her clipboard. "This is your second violation this month. That's a due lot 200 fine." "Second." Mom's brow furrowed. "We've never gotten a citation before." Evelyn's lips curled into a sneer. "Don't play dumb with me. The mailbox flag was bent last week. I'll let it slide, but I'm done being lenient." I could see Mom's patience fraying, but she kept her tone even. "Evelyn, that seems a bit steep for a hose. Can we work this out? I'll fix it right now." "Rules are rules," Evelyn barked, stepping closer, her sensible sneakers squeaking on the pavement. "If you can't follow them, maybe you shouldn't be staying here." That's what happened. Mom, ever the diplomat, reached for the hose to drag it back to the garage. Evelyn, in a flash of irrational rage, yanked it from her hands. "It's documented already," she shrieked. Mom, startled, tried to steady herself, but Evelyn shoved her hard. My 70-year-old mother, who'd had a knee replacement 2 years prior, stumbled backward, her arms flailing. Her head struck the edge of the stone planter with a sound I'll never unhear, a dull, wet thud. I was out the door in seconds, my sling forgotten, pain shooting through my shoulder as I ran. "Mom!" I dropped beside her, my hands hovering over her still form. Blood seeped from a gash above her temple, staining the grass. Evelyn stood there, frozen, her clipboard dangling limply. "Two didn't mean," she stammered, her face paling. She was resisting. "Call an ambulance." I roared, my voice raw. Neighbors emerged, Mr. Lopez with his phone already dialing 911, Mrs. Kim rushing over with a dish towel to press against Mom's head. Evelyn backed away, muttering excuses, but I barely heard her. My world narrowed to Mom's shallow breathing and the faint pulse I found at her wrist. The paramedics arrived in a blur of sirens and efficiency. As they loaded Mom into the ambulance, one asked what happened. Before I could speak, Evelyn piped up. She tripped. It was an accident. She pushed her, I said, my voice cold and steady, locking eyes with Evelyn. I saw it. They saw it. I gestured to the growing crowd of neighbors, some nodding grimly. 3 hours later, I sat in the sterile glow of St. Mary's Hospital, watching Mom's chest rise and fall. Concussion. 15 stitches. A fractured wrist from trying to break her fall. The doctor, a kind-eyed woman named Dr. Patel, assured me she'd recover, but at her age, they'd keep her for observation. My phone buzzed incessantly texts from neighbors, offers of help, and whispered accounts of Evelyn's past cruelties. Each message stoked the fire in my chest. This wasn't just about Mom. This was about a neighborhood suffocating under Evelyn Hart's iron fist. Evelyn Hart hadn't always been a monster. When she'd taken over as HOA president 4 years ago, she'd seemed like a breath of fresh air. A retired accountant with a knack for organization, she'd promised to streamline the chaotic mess left by her predecessor. At first, her rules made sin-trimmed hedges, no junk cars and driveways, a cohesive aesthetic for Willow Grove Estates. I'd admired her efficiency from afar, content to keep my head down and my secrets buried. But power has a way of twisting people. Within a year, Evelyn's perfectionism morphed into something darker. She wielded the HOA bylaws like a weapon, her clipboard a guillotine. I'd watch from my home office, a converted attic with a VYEW of the cul-de-sac, as she terrorized our neighbors over the pettiest infractions. Take Mrs. Elena Ortiz, a widow in her 80s who lived 3 doors down. She'd planted a row of marigolds along her walkway to honor her late husband, Miguel. Evelyn cited her for unauthorized landscaping under Section 12, Paragraph 9, and fined her due law $75. When Elena tearfully explained the flower's significance, Evelyn's response was ice cold. Sentiment doesn't override regulations. The next day, the marigolds were gone, ripped out by a landscaping crew Evelyn had called, billing Elena for the Sayre VYC. Then there was the Patel family across the street. Devout Hindus, they hung a small string of prayer flags on their porch during Diwali. Evelyn slapped them with weekly due law 50 fines for non-compliant decorations, ignoring the fact that her best friend, Linda Grayson, kept a garish Santa inflatable in her yard year-round without a peep. The Patels fought back, citing religious freedom, but Evelyn doubled down, threatening legal action until they relented. The worst was the Thompsons, Mark and Lisa, a young couple with a 6-year-old son, Jamie, who'd been born with cerebral palsy. They'd build a wooden ramp for his wheelchair, a sturdy, unobtrusive structure painted to match their house. Evelyn deemed it aesthetic noncompliance and fined them due law $300 unless they repainted it in approved taupe. Mark, a mechanic barely scraping by, spent weeks battling her, only to cave when the fines hit due law $1,000. Meanwhile, Evelyn's cousin's unpainted shed explicitly banned by the bylaws stood untouched. I documented it all. For years of notes, photos, and audio recordings stored in a locked drawer in my office. Why? Because I wasn't just Daniel Carter, the quiet guy who waved hello and kept his lawn mowed. I was the silent majority owner of Willow Grove Estates. Through a web of LLCs and a discreet property management firm, I'd bought 32 of the 60 homes in the neighborhood over the past 5 years. It started as a business move property values had dipped after a local factory closed, and I saw an opportunity. But as Evelyn's tyranny grew, my investment became a weapon I hadn't yet unsheathed. Evelyn's house. Mine. She'd sold it 3 years ago after a messy divorce drained her SAVYNGS, and my company snapped it up. She'd been renting from me ever since, oddly VYS to the fact that her landlord was the man she'd dismissed as a nobody. I owned the Ortiz house, the Patels, the Thompsons half the damn street. I'd stayed quiet, biding my time building my case. Until she hurt Mom. The hospital VY gill stretched into the night. Mom woke briefly, groggy but coherent, squeezing my hand with a weak smile. "Don't fuss, Danny. I'm tougher than I look." I forced a laugh, but the sight of her bandaged, bruised, and force snaking from her arm hardened my resolve. Evelyn had crossed the line, and I was done waiting. Back home, I pulled my files from the drawer. Pages of violations, bank statements showing HOA funds funneled to Evelyn's brother's consulting firm, emails from neighbors begging for mercy she never granted. I'd hired a private investigator 2 years ago, a grizzled ex-cop named Ray Torres, to dig deeper. His report sat at the bottom of the pile. Dula $300,000 in misappropriated funds over 4 years, including a security upgrade that never happened and a community event budget that funded Evelyn's La VYSH 55th birthday party. It was damning and it was time to use it. Evelyn, meanwhile, wasn't idle. Word spread that she'd been charged with assault but posted bail within hours. She'd started a whisper campaign, claiming Mom had lunged at her, that she'd acted in self-defense. A few of her loyalists, Linda Grayson, and a spineless board member named Greg Voss, backed her story. But the neighbors who'd seen it unfold weren't buying it. Texts flooded my phone. "She's lying, Dan. We've got your back. Evelyn's gone too far." The emergency HOA meeting was set for Friday night, called by Evelyn to address the incident. She likely planned to spin her tale, rally her cronies, and bury the truth. I had other plans. Mom, discharged that morning, insisted on coming. "I want to see her face when you take her down," she said, her voice steady despite the cane she now leaned on. I couldn't say no. The Willow Grove Community Center buzzed with tension that Friday evening. Over 100 residents packed the folding chairs, far more than the usual dozen who bothered with HOA meetings. Word of Mom's injury and Evelyn's arrest had spread like wildfire, drawing out even the recluses. Evelyn stood at the podium in a crisp blazer, flanked by Greg and Linda, her expression a mask of wounded dignity. She tapped her gavel, calling the room to order. "We're here to discuss a regrettable misunderstanding," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "On Tuesday, I was conducting a routine inspection when Grace Carter became confrontational over a valid citation. I acted to protect myself. I stood, cutting her off. 'That's a lie, Evelyn.' The room hushed. I helped Mom to her feet beside me, her bandaged head and cane a silent rebuke. 'You shoved my 70-year-old mother over a garden hose. She's got a concussion and a fractured wrist because of you.' Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. 'You're out of order, Daniel. Sit down or leave.' I stepped forward, my shoulder throbbing but my voice steady. 'No, Evelyn, you're out of order. And you've been for years.' I turned to the audience, many filming with their phones. 'I'm Daniel Carter. Most of you know me as the guy who keeps to himself. What you don't know is that I'm the majority owner of Willow Grove Estates.' Gasps echoed. Evelyn's composure cracked. 'What are you talking about?' I pulled out my tablet, projecting documents onto the screen behind hers, LLC records, rental agreements. 'Through Carter Holdings, I own 32 homes here. The Ortiz house, the Patels, the Thompsons, and yes, Evelyn, 218 Willow Lane, your house.' Her face drained of color. 'That's impossible.' You sold it after your divorce,' I said, my tone calm but relentless. 'You've been renting from me for 3 years. And I've been watching you, documenting every fine, every abuse of power, every dollar you've siphoned from this community.' The screen flashed with EVY Denke, photos of her cousin's shed, bank records of the security scam, a VY Deo of her berating Elena Ortiz over the marigolds. 'You fined the Patels for their prayer flags, but ignored Linda's Santa. You forced the Thompsons to repaint Jamie's ramp while your nephew's basketball hoop band by the bylaws stays up. And you assaulted my mother over a hose.' Evelyn gripped the podium, trembling. 'This is a setup.' 'Enough,' I said, raising my voice. 'Under the bylaws, each property gets a vote. I own 32. That's a majority. Effective immediately, you're removed as HOA president. A forensic audit will re-VY EU all finances, and every fine you've issued will be scrutinized.' The room erupted. Neighbors stood, sharing their stories. Elena Ortiz wept as she recounted the marigolds. Mark Thompson slammed his fist on a chair, describing Jamie's humiliation. A college kid, Jamal Hayes, revealed Evelyn had called the cops on him for walking his dog 3 times. Each tale peeled back another layer of her tyranny. Evelyn tried to flee, but 2 officers stepped forward. "Evelyn Hart, you're under arrest for assault and embezzlement," one said, cuffing her as she sputtered protests. Mom rose, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I don't hold grudges, Evelyn, but I believe in fairness. You forgot that." As they led her away, Evelyn's empire collapsed. The crowd cheered not for me, but for themselves, for the freedom they'd reclaimed. The aftermath was swift. A new HOA board Elena, Mark, and a quiet retiree named Mrs. Chun took over, slashing the rulebook to essentials. The audit uncovered July $350,000 in fraud. Evelyn and Greg faced charges, while Linda slunk away in disgrace. Evelyn pleaded guilty, got probation, and left town. Mom healed, moving in permanently to lead a gardening club that turned our park into a riot of Colorno fines attached. I kept my other properties quiet. The point wasn't power, it was peace. On my desk sits a photo of Mom in the garden, laughing with Jamal and Jamie, and beside it, a tiny hose reel. A reminder, even the smallest spark can ignite a revolution. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.